Good morning, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to United Israel World Union. This is our Sabbath morning scripture study, coming to you live from St. Francisville, and I am pleased to be here with you today. Thank you very much for joining us. As many of you know, and all too well, I have been in sort of an inscription mode lately. Actually, it's gone for a couple of years. I've been working on some of these ancient lapidary inscriptions and things like the Moabite stela, also known as the Mesha stone. Been dealing a lot lately with the Siloam inscription. Just recently, I've been dealing and studying and publishing things on the Mount Ebal lead inscription. We've talked about that a little bit on other programs I do, apart from United Israel Saturday morning studies. And then just recently, last week, I got into this Jerusalem stone tablet inscription. All these things fascinate me. So I kind of thought about midweek that I could push that, the inscriptional type studies, push those to the side and jump back into the Bible, which I did. And lo and behold, I'm going to be working a little bit in another inscription today we're going to talk about. You'll see where I'm going with that very soon. So, but I thought that I would begin this morning. First of all, let me welcome you. We are in our Pentateuch study. We're working through the annual cycle of readings. We are in the book of Bamidbar. We're in the book of Numbers, and we're dealing with a person by the name of Balaam, as we call him in the southern U.S. Anciently, he was known as Balaam. Balaam. So you can say it how you want. I might use both of those today. I might go back to my old King James days and call him Balaam. Anyway, we're talking from Parsha Balak. We're talking about Balak, and Balak is concerned. He sees this massive group of people coming to his border, and so I have the map behind me because we're going to do a little bit of geography today, and I thought it might be handy. But even though I have a map behind me that actually looks pretty nice with this green shirt, I might add. But I want you to use your Bible map in your Bible as I discuss some of these places so you can really kind of get a better look at it. You can see where we are, because not only are we interested when we look at the text in understanding context within the text itself, but we want to know geographically and chronologically where we are. Last week, I spent a good bit of time talking about how Numbers chapter 20 seem to go from, say, year 2 or 3. By the time you get into from 19 to 20, you feel like you've stepped into a time warp and you suddenly have walked past 38 years of the wilderness journey. So now, just so you know, chronologically, we are in the 40th year of the wilderness wanderings, and Aaron and Miriam are both dead according to the text of the Pentateuch. And here we are about to cross over after the death of Aaron. Now, notice how I said this. After the death of Aaron, we're about to cross the rift. Now, when I say the rift, you see this beautiful, fertile area here that's on my map. It's not actually that green in all places in the real world, but it indicates this is the Great African Rift, it's called. And it's a depression. And within that depression, we have the Jordan River. And just so you know this, Jordan is the name for the Jordan. Jordan in Hebrew, Yachad, means to go down. So this river goes down all the way. Actually, it goes from, like the Sea of Galilee down through this region and goes into the Dead Sea. Now, I'm going to give you some biblical names for these bodies of water later, and I only use Sea of Galilee and Dead Sea in my opening monologue just because you're familiar with that. But let's go biblical, and we're going to use real names here today, but I'll share that with you momentarily. Now, I want to go, before we get started, I want to look at, or as we get started, I should say, I want to kind of close things out where we were last week. So go with me to the book of Numbers, to chapter 21, and I want to go to verse 10. Now, Aaron is already dead, and we've not crossed the rift. Let me finish my thought I started a moment ago. Most people in Bible atlases and tour guides will put Aaron's death and burial east of the rift, over in this area, and that's wrong. It's wrong if you go by the biblical account. Now, you can go, when you go to Jordan, and you can see the tomb of Aaron. I don't know whose tomb that is, and I'm sure you can get a postcard there, but it's not Aaron's tomb. Aaron dies west of the Jordan, very clearly indicated in the text. He's already dead before they cross. Now, it's not unlike the Israelites to bring the body of somebody with them and bury them, but that's not what the text says. So he's buried west of the Jordan, even before they tangle with the people of Arad, which is clearly west of the Jordan. So here we go. We're in Numbers chapter 21, just kind of give you some geographical references here. And the people of Israel, verse 10, set out and camped in Ovot. And they set out from Ovot and camped at Abarim in the wilderness that is opposite Moab, toward the sunrise. So they're facing the sunrise. What location would you look for the sun to rise? Even in ancient times, it rises in the east, sets in the west. See how the Bible gives us these clues? From there, they set out and camped in the valley of Zered. Now, the Wadi Zered, if you find it on your map, I'm pointing to it on my map, but it's at the bottom of you just know it as the Dead Sea. You don't know the biblical name for it, but the Dead Sea. There is a wadi, a riverbed, and I call it wadi. It's actually an Arabic name. I like that. But it indicates a waterbed, a water course, if you will. It only has water in it when the water is there. Does that make sense? In other words, when it's not the rainy season and the floodwaters aren't pouring through the dry desert land, it's just a dry riverbed. But they said they set out and camped in the Wadi Zered. Now, by the way, you have to know what time of year you can do that, because it's not safe to have 603,550, men, women, children camping in a wadi in certain times of the year. Verse 13, from there they set out and camped on the other side of the Arnon. The Arnon. By the way, I have a YouTube video up that will show you the Wadi Arnon. And it says, which is in the wilderness that extends from the border of the Amorites. For the Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. Now, I'm going to look at my map and make sure I'm pointing. This map doesn't indicate the Wadi Arnon. The Wadi Arnon is about approximately midway on the Dead Sea as you know it. Okay? On the right-hand side of your map, on the east, you'll see what's called the Wadi Arnon. Now, what I want you to understand is that we've already talked about the Wadi Zered, which is at the southeastern tip of the Dead Sea, and now we're talking about midway up the Dead Sea. What direction are the children of Israel moving? North, right? It's a clear indication that they're traveling north. They cross the Wadi Zered. They go up into and they camp, as it says. Verse Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. So south of the Wadi Arnon, which is known today as the Wadi Mujib, south of that is Moab. North of the Wadi Arnon are the Amorites. Everybody say Amorites, not in here. For the Arnon is the border. Now, therefore, now look, I want you to listen to this. Verse 14 is a quote within the text from an ancient source. This is what they say. It says, therefore it is said in the book of the wars of the Lord. Anybody have that in your Bible? We don't have that. It's an ancient source being quoted by the biblical writer. Here's what they say. Verse 14, it says, Vahav or Wahab in Sufa and the valleys of the Arnon and the slope of the valleys that extend to the seat of Ar and leans to the border of Moab. So this is just an old saying. It was in the book of the wars of the Lord. It's describing territory on the east side. Now, what is the book of the wars of the Lord? I don't know, but I'm thinking that it might have to do with various battles that took place in Israelite history maybe, or ancient history before the Israelites, really. Because notice, this book of the wars of the Lord is already talking about this when the writer of the book of Numbers pencils it in. Okay, now, there's another ancient source. And by the way, in verse 16, they continue to move. There's some, verse 17, the Israelites sang a song, Spring up, oh well, within my soul. You know that song, they sang that. And then it goes down. They're traveling through. I want to get to verse 26. Well, let's look at 22. Israel, verse 21, sent messengers to Sihon, the king of the Amorites. Now, where's the Amorites? Where are the Amorites, I should say? Correct my grammar, please. The Amorites are north of the Wadi Arnon. So Israel sends messengers to north of the Wadi Arnon, and he says this, verse 22, let me pass through your land, will not turn aside into field or vineyard, will not drink the water of a well, will go by the king's highway until we've passed through your territory. In other words, there is an ancient route, and many people believe that it follows, or the modern highway follows. The Tylers and Jonah and I took this journey not too long ago. You can see a video of it. But watch this, verse 23. Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through its territory. He gathered all his people together and went out against Israel to the wilderness and came to Yachad and fought against Israel. So they have a battle here. And Yachad is, look at your map, you'll see that it's a border town close to the region of the Amorites. It's in the land of the Amorites. And it's a battle that's fought here. In verse 24, and Israel defeated him with the edge of the sword and took possession of his land from the Arnon to Yavok, as far as to the Amorites, for the border of the Amorites was strong. And Israel took all these cities, and Israel settled in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon and all its villages. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab and taken all his land out of his hand as far as the Arnon. Therefore, ballad singers say. Now, we're about to get to another ancient source. So what I want you to understand is that if you read the book of Numbers, where we're reading now, you're going to find that once Israel crosses the rift, the Jordan Rift, comes up from the Wadi, crosses the Wadi Zered, crosses the Wadi Arnon, defeats Sihon. If I continued, I'm not. I'm going to get into this in a future class. So, according to the text, they go all the way up north, beat Og, the king of Bashan, and then they have to hurry back down again because the story takes place in the south. Now, scholars look at this and they say, you know, it's hard to imagine all of this geography just doesn't seem to make sense. You go all the way up, then you come down. And but be that as it may, that's for a class. We're going to talk about the actual battles east of the Jordan Rift in a class when we get to Deuteronomy, because Deuteronomy covers the same route differently. And we're going to talk about that in Deuteronomy. Okay, here's what the ballad singers say. Like you see a bunch of ballad singers sitting around east of the Jordan in their tent, camels in the distance, slight wind blowing the tent flaps, and you hear this song break out. And here's the song. Come to Heshbon, let it be built. Let the city of Sihon be established. For fire came out from Heshbon, flame from the city of Sihon. It devoured Ar of Moab and swallowed the heights of the Arnon. Woe to you, O Moab! You're undone, O people of Chemosh. He's made his sons fugitives and his daughters captives to an Amorite king, Sihon. So we overthrew them, Heshbon, as far as Dibon perished, and we laid waste as far as Nophah. Fire spread as far as Medaba. It's a beautiful song, isn't it? It's what they're singing about. It's what they see. It's the memories of these battles and heroic legends of chieftains and the way that they encountered their enemies and smashed and shattered. Biblical text and other ancient inscriptions are full of this kind of stuff. They engrave it on stone, they write it on tablets. But this is the world that we're living in, and the Bible accurately gives us snapshots of that ancient world. I love these. These are considered some of the earliest pieces of literature, if I can call it that are extant. In other words, whenever this is written, according to the traditional view, Moses is, or someone in that time period, is writing this down as it takes place. And you get the image from reading that someone said, hey, don't forget to put that song those boys were singing in the tent. That's cool. Put that in there. See, the ballad singers. Okay. Now, these ancient sources in these ancient locations, people, particularly in the 19th century, this is why I'm so into the 19th century, because as travel opened up to the Middle East and the world became smaller, these explorers, these adventurers would go to the lands of the Bible, and they didn't have some academic journal. They took their Bible with them. These were brilliant explorers. They knew the biblical languages. They could speak, many of them could speak Hebrew and Arabic, and they wandered off into the desert. They opened their Bible and they said, wonder where Heshbon is. You know what they would do? They would look at their biblical text and they'd say, okay, we know where they entered, and this is the Wadi Zerd. And a lot of times the Arabic names would be similar enough to where they would say, that's probably, so they began to map these things out. In fact, in the 1800s, mid to late 1800s, 1865, the Palestine Exploration Fund was founded, and one of the key missions of that organization was to identify these ancient biblical sites. So I kind of wanted to give you that background. So beginning in the 19th century, a lot of work is done both east and west. In fact, I have on my desk right now a survey of Western Palestine, meaning on this side of the rift, that's published by a couple of great explorers you probably heard of, Condor and Warren. Now, back to the east side where we are with the children of Israel right now. In the 1960s, so I'm fast forwarding a little bit, in the 1960s, under the auspices of the University of Leiden, a Dutch group known as the Netherlands Organization for the Advancement of Pure Research sponsored several seasons of archaeological excavations. And they're east of the rift, and I'm going to tell you where they are. It's in modern-day Jordan, and they were between, if you find it on your map, the location of this excavation. Here is what you call the Sea of Galilee, and here's what you call the Dead Sea. it's going to be about right in the middle of those where this excavation takes place. Now, in the Bible, the Dead Sea is not called the Dead Sea. In fact, on my tours going forward, I'll tell people on the bus from now on, this is called the Dead Sea by people who don't know their Bible. No, I won't say that. It's actually called in the Bible two names, the Yom HaAravah and the Yom HaMelech, the Salt Sea or the Sea of the Arava. The Arava is an important region. Now, a lot of times in your biblical text, when we get into prophecies and so forth, the English might say desert or wilderness, but you have to look behind the Hebrew or the English because the Hebrew is going to give you more detail. So, for instance, the translator calls it the wilderness, but this is actually Arava. Now, technically, the Arava goes from this, what is often called the Sea of Galilee, this rift all the way down into this region, even south of the Dead Sea. But most people today, if you say the Arava, they're focused south of the Dead Sea. Okay, but it's in this rift. Now, let me give you a couple of passages just so you know. It is important that we use biblical names for biblical places. So I'm just going to give you a couple. Go with me to Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 17. And then I'm going to tell you about this excavation. Actually, let's back up one verse to verse 15. To Machir I give Gilead, and to the Reubenites and the Gadites I gave the territory from Gilead as far as the valley of the Arnon. You know where the Arnon is, right? About midway on the Dead Sea. With the middle of the valley as the border, as far over as the river Jabbok. In Hebrew, it's Yavok. The border of the Ammonites. See, now we're talking about Ammonite territory. You already learned that this morning. And the Arava also, with the Jordan as the border from Kinneret. What is Kinneret? As far as the Sea of the Arava, comma, the Salt Sea, under the slopes of Pisgah on the east. Just so you know, this little sea up here that's called the Sea of Galilee by most is called the Sea of Kinneret. Now, kinnor is a harp or a lyre. It's an ancient musical instrument. You ever see a picture, like a satellite photo of the Sea of Galilee? It's shaped like a harp or a lyre, an ancient. So it's called the Yom Kinneret. And then down below it, see, it's describing geography here. You understand that it's talking about the sea, the Salt Sea or the Sea of the Arava. So I'm just going to give you a couple of verses here. And you write these down, and John will certainly, Baruch will write them down. Deuteronomy 3:17, Deuteronomy 4:49, Joshua 3:16, Joshua 12:3, 2 Kings 14:25. Now I want to look at another one in the book of Numbers. Go with me to Numbers 34, verse 11. A little bit of geography. And the border shall go down from Shepham to Riblah on the east of Ain, and the border shall go down and reach to the shoulder of the Sea of Kinneret on the east. So you need to know the name, the biblical names of these, because that's the only way the Bible describes it. One more, Joshua chapter 12 and verse 3. And the Arava to the Sea of Kinneret eastward in the direction of Beit Yeshimot to the Sea of the Arava, the Salt Sea, southward to the foot of the slopes of Pisgah. Now, all these places are going to be very important. So this Dutch group, the Netherlands Organization for the Advancement of Pure Research, is here, in between the Kinneret and the Arava Sea on the east side. Now, to get specific, the site of the archaeological excavations are 8 kilometers east of the Jordan River, 8 kilometers east, and 1 kilometer north of Yavok. Now, what else happened at Yavok? Remember the story of the Yavok where Jacob wrestles with the angel in Genesis chapter 32, 33? So this is where we're at. Now, when these people go to excavate there, they perform several seasons of archaeological digs there. The first round, the work begins in 1960 and goes all the way up through 1967, okay? Now, in 1964, they hit pay dirt. Now, they're working in an area that's multi-roomed, and they hit pay dirt in 1967. In 1964, they find 11 clay tablets, ancient clay tablets. Now, of the 11, 3 of the 11 had writing on it in West Semitic Canaanite script. So you would think these are probably pretty old, right? West Semitic Canaanite script, 3 of the 11. Now, 7 only had dots. There's no writing on it. And 1 was uninscribed, as if this is like I have over on my desk, I have a ream of paper. And so it's like whoever had this room set up, they had 3 tablets completed. 1 was being prepared for writing, and 1 was in the stack to be used for his next Sabbath teaching. Nothing was written on it yet, okay? Now, the tablets were discovered in a layer that was interpreted as being a destruction layer. So as you work in an archaeological site, you work your way down. When you get to an area, as you're digging the top off, you dig, you get to an area with a bunch of charred remains. This is how, obviously, archaeologists say, hey, there's a big fire here. Let's see if we can't date it. So they look for remains within this area, this strata that's got destruction, and then they can date when the destruction happened. So you find the destruction layer, you find clues within that help you date it, then you can say, this is when this took place. Now, they were able to date this layer of destruction. Now, I'm still in 1964, because they found a cartouche of an Egyptian queen. And that queen, this cartouche of the queen, dates clearly to the 1200 BCE timeline. 1200 BCE. Now, that's not the end of it. In other words, they didn't get it built day one and then it was destroyed and it's dated to 1200 BCE. The structure was there, obviously, before the destruction. So the question is to this group of Dutch archaeologists, how old is it? And they continue their dig. Now, by the way, there were other signs in and around there that had many challenged that late date. So they began to look earlier and earlier and earlier. And by the way, later seasons, they found 4 more tablets at this particular site. I'm going to give you the name of it in a minute. Some of you may have already put it up for me, but if you haven't, don't. I'm going to get to that. That was 64. So 1967, toward the end of the season, in this multi-chambered structure, right, walls and so forth, they find evidence of an earthquake. And they date the earthquake to about the Persian period. So as they unearth, they find this one particular area that they've just worked on. And they found an earthquake, evidence of an earthquake. Now, by the way, what caused this geologically? It's a rift. It's on a great fault line that runs all the way into Africa. So earthquakes are actually pretty common, and we have a lot of evidence archaeologically that there were earthquakes. And the Bible talks about earthquakes. Remember in Isaiah, it talks about so many years after this great earthquake. And Zechariah gives a prophecy about an earthquake that's coming that's going to split Jerusalem. The people of the Bible know earthquakes. This was one of them. Well, in one of these rooms, there is a wall which has fallen. They determine this as they unearth this room, and it has fallen from another earthquake. And on the wall that is on the floor were remains of an inscription. You ready? I told you I have to get into inscriptions even on Saturday morning now. They're just all over the place. Now, part of the inscription is intact on the wall. It's still on the wall. And let me explain to you what it looks like. The wall itself, stone wall, is covered in plaster. And then on the plaster is an inscription that is painted. Okay, this isn't engraved. It's not chiseled. It's painted on the wall, on the plaster, on the stone wall. So a good part of it is on that wall, still intact in the plaster, and it's in red and black ink. This is a red-lettered edition. Whatever is written on this wall has got red letters. Now, some of you are thinking, wow, red letters must be important. Well, that's exactly what they interpreted them to be. That didn't start with the New Testament, folks. This goes back way early, this red lettered thing. So it's got red and black letters, and it's designated KAI 312. All inscriptions follow this German system, and in German it's Kananäische und Aramäische Inschriften, Canaanite and Aramaic inscriptions. And in that catalog, in other words, if you're going to study inscriptions, you have to know this work, because the Canaanite and Aramaic inscriptions book is going to catalog all of these. This one is number 312. Now listen to what the Oxford Handbook of Biblical Studies says of this inscription. It is the oldest example of a book in a West Semitic language written with an alphabet, and it is the oldest piece of Aramaic literature. Aramaic from Aram. All right, stick with me. So in an ancient West Semitic language, an inscription on the wall, written in black and red ink on plaster. By the way, not only is there part of it intact, but there are 119 broken pieces of plaster with other letters on it, because it's an earthquake. It's caused this to fall. So archaeologists have picked up, collected all 119 of these pieces. Then it becomes like a really hard jigsaw puzzle. You can imagine. So, but this is the state of things. Now, there's a debate. There's a debate on everything. There's a debate on this phraseology in the Oxford Bible Dictionary about it being an Aramaic. And the reason some suggest an early ancient Aramaic is because where we would expect in Canaanite to find the word ben for son, it says bar. All right? Bar is Aramaic. It's not Hebrew. So like in the book of Daniel, for instance, we have elements that part of which is written in Aramaic and not Hebrew. So you have to know, like the son of man, bar Enosh, whereas in Hebrew it would be ben Adam, right? But they find traces or clues that it might be some early form of Aramaic, but at the same time, there are other clues which suggest that it's Canaanite. So it's even early. Anyway, it yields much debate, discussions, articles, but most people who study this agree on its main components. It's clearly, get this, it's clearly an ancient story. If any of you are wondering why in the world I could be talking about this today, it's an ancient story, and it's about a well-known person, a celebrated figure. This person written about on this inscription is a seer of the gods. They come to him at night. This personality that's being written about on the walls of this ancient structure says that the gods come to him at night. It says he has visions of El, the various terms for deity, El, Elohim, not Elohim as we would find in Hebrew, but with a nun, an in, Elohim. And then there's a term that's used that's very similar for deity to our Shaddai. It's plural though, and it's written Shaddayin. The seer is named in this inscription. You know what his name is? Balaam. You might say, well, probably a lot of people named Balaam. You know, it's probably a common name. Well, this guy's name, we get his dad's name too. His dad's name is Beor. Balaam, or Balaam, the son of Beor. Well, I'll be. That just happens to be the name of our Balaam. Our Balaam also, we also know his dad's name. His dad's name is Beor. What are the chances? So I'm going to read you an academic published just a little bit of what one scholarly view of the translation is. I'm just going to read you a few bits of it. The misfortunes of the book of Balaam, son of Beor, a divine seer was he. This is on this ancient inscription. The gods came to him at night, and he beheld a vision in accordance with El's utterance. They said to Balaam, son of Beor, so will it be done with naught surviving. No one has seen the likes of what you've heard. Balaam is then going to report his vision to his friends. So we have Balaam is surrounded by an entourage. Sounds a little bit like the story in the Bible. People all around him and wanting to know what God said. And well, this Balaam, this archaeological Balaam, somebody goes, it's a different guy. All right, different guy. But listen to this. So Balaam arose on the morrow. He summoned the heads of the assembly to him. So he brings the leadership team in. For 2 days he fasted and wept bitterly. And his intimates entered into his presence, and they said to Balaam, son of Beor, why do you fast? Why do you weep? And he said to them, be seated, and I will relate to you what the Shaddai gods have planned. And go see the acts of God. The gods have banded together. The Shaddai gods have established a council, and it goes on. So here we are, east of the rift, north of the Wadi Arnon, the Wadi Mujib, close to the Arava Sea, and we find, now he's not far from Pisgah really, and we find a celebrated seer by the name of Balaam, son of Beor, plastered on the wall. Our archaeological Balaam, discovered east of the Jordan, owned the river. Look with me at the book of Numbers, Numbers chapter 22, verse 5. Let's go to verse 4. And Moab said to the elders of Midian, this horde will now lick up all that's around us, as the ox licks up the grass of the field. So Balak, the son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at that time, sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Petor, which is near the river in the land of the people of Amal, to call him, saying, behold, a people has come out of Egypt. Now, your translation may read something differently. One translation, I think, says, in the land of the people of his kindred, Amo. They read it Amo, right? You follow me on that? So let me ask you, we know roughly where Balak is. We know where Moab is. And where is it that we think Balaam is from? Now, in this translation, by the river, but there are other places that give us other locations. I'm going to come back to this, but most people think that Balaam is somewhere between the two rivers. We're going to read in a moment, Aram Naharaim is typically rendered Mesopotamia, which both terms indicate the land between two rivers. Behind me, I have this map. The Tigris is on the north and east, and the Euphrates is on the south and the west. Between these two rivers is called Mesopotamia. Most people believe that that's where he has to send to fetch this guy, Balaam. We're going to come back to that. Okay. The archaeological Balaam refers to Shaddai. He uses the term El and Shaddai, and my biblical Balaam also uses Shaddai. Go with me to Numbers chapter 24. In Numbers chapter 24, and let's see where I want to start, because I'm going to read all this in a moment, but look at verse 4. The oracle of him who hears the words of God, who sees the vision of Shaddai. Now look down at verse 16. In verse 16, this same biblical Balaam says, the oracle of him who hears the words of God, who knows the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of Shaddai. So whoever the biblical Balaam is, he gets his visions from a God he refers to as Shaddai. And the archaeological Balaam, it might be a different guy, has the same dad's name. Anyway, but he has a vision from a God, Shaddai. It's probably different, but anyway. So let's read through the words of Balaam. It's a good day to do it. Numbers chapter 23. I'm only going to read his prophecies. Verse 7. Beginning in verse 7. 23:7. And Balaam took up this discourse and said, from Aram, Balak has brought me, the king of Moab, from the eastern mountains. Come, curse Jacob for me. Come, denounce Israel. How can I curse whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce whom the Lord has not denounced? For from the top of the crags I see him, from the hills I behold him. Behold, a people dwelling alone and not counting itself among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob or number the fourth part of Israel? Let me die the death of the upright and let my end be like his. Then, of course, you get Balak saying, what are you doing? I brought you here to curse Israel. Remember that? All right. Now, we're going to give you his next, what was supposed to be a curse, his next words, verse 18 of chapter 23. And Balaam took up his discourse and said, rise, Balak, and hear. Give ear to me, O son of Zippor. God is not man that he should lie, or a son of man that he should change his mind. Has he said, and will he not do it? Or has he spoken, and will he not fulfill it? Behold, I received a command to bless. He's blessed, and I cannot revoke it. He's not beheld misfortune in Jacob, nor has he seen trouble in Israel. The Lord their God is with them, and the shout of a king is among them. God brings them out of Egypt and is for them like the horns of the wild ox. For there is no enchantment against Jacob, no divination against Israel. Now it will be said of Jacob and Israel, what has God wrought? Behold, a people as a lioness it rises up, and as a lion it lifts itself. It does not lie down until it has devoured the prey and drunk the blood of the slain. After he hears this, Balak says, listen, don't curse them, don't bless them. He basically says, you're not helping, don't say anything. And why is that? Because this guy, whoever Balaam is, he's celebrated. He's known to be one who hears from God and has visions of God. And he's looking on Israel, and so far, all he's doing is giving blessings. Balak is like, man, just shut up. Go to Numbers 24. Numbers 24, I want to read from verse 3. We only have 2 more of these to do. Let's verse 2, 24:2. And Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he saw Israel camping tribe by tribe. Get this. And the Spirit of God came upon him. This is a pagan prophet. And he took up his discourse and said, the oracle of Balaam, son of Beor. I happen to be named the same as the archaeological guy, but no, he doesn't say that. The oracle of the man whose eye is opened, the oracle of him who hears the words of God, who sees the vision of Shaddai, falling down with his eyes uncovered. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your encampments, O Israel, like palm groves that stretch afar, like gardens beside a river, like aloes that the Lord has planted, like cedar trees beside the waters. Water shall flow from his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. His king shall be higher than Agag. His kingdom shall be exalted. God brings him out of Egypt and is for him like the horns of a wild ox. He likes that part. He put that in the other one. He shall eat up the nations, his adversaries, and shall break their bones in pieces and pierce them through with his arrows. He crouched, he lay down like a lion and like a lioness. Who will rouse him up? Blessed are those who bless you. Cursed are those who curse you. Now Balak he's beside himself. He called, he says, these 3 times you've done this, just leave. He said, basically, if you read the rest of the text in context, I brought you here. I would have made you a rich man, but you've chosen this. All right, now go down to verse 15. This is what Balaam's last words. And he took up his discourse and said, the oracle of Balaam, the son of Beor, the oracle of the man whose eye is opened. I like that phrase. The oracle of him who hears the words of God and knows the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of Shaddai, falling down with his eyes uncovered. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob. A scepter shall rise out of Israel. It shall crush the forehead of Moab, break down all the sons of Sheth. Edom shall be dispossessed. Seir also his enemies shall be dispossessed. Israel is doing valiantly, and one from Jacob shall exercise dominion and destroy the survivors of the cities. Then he gives prophecies over Amalek, verse 20, over the Kenite, verse 21, over Cain, verse 22, and Asher. And then in verse 23, he gets into Kittim. He just goes on this global prophecy thing. And then it looks in verse 25, it says, then Balaam arose, went back to his place, and Balak also went his way. And then it says in verse 25 that Israel is dwelling at this time at Shittim. Okay. Now, Balaam is known as a pagan prophet. In fact, later in the story, we're going to find that he's killed. If you read the story, it's really bizarre. Like Balaam seems in the text to do exactly what he's supposed to do. When the people ask for a word, hey, Balak wants to bring you here, he says, I got to check with God on that. You ever know somebody like that? You say, hey, would you like to go to the movies with me? I need to pray about that, brother. Let me ask God about that. Well, this is the way Balaam is. He's saying, I don't know. I need to check first. I'll let you know in the morning. So he comes to him. He says, look, I prayed about it. God said I can go with you. But if I go, I can only say what he tells me to say. So remember, God tells him to go. Well, the next morning he packs up to go, and God's mad at him and wants to kill him. And you remember the story about the donkey and all. This guy comes on it. It goes 3 or 4 times. And in one point, Balaam says to the angel of the Lord, look, if you want me to go back, I'll go back. And the angel of the Lord says, no, go ahead. Just tell them what we tell you to tell them. You know, it's just bizarre, this whole story. It's interesting. Now, the thing about it is Balaam's story is not only told in the book of Numbers, he's mentioned in Deuteronomy as well. We'll see that in a moment. But he's found in all 3 sections of the Hebrew Bible. He's found in the Torah, in the prophets, and in the writings. Get this, Balaam is also spoken of in the New Testament and the Quran. Now, how many biblical people can you think of that fit all of those categories? Interesting. All right, we're going to roll through these quickly. I want you to go with me to Deuteronomy chapter 23. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 4. It's verse 3 in the English, I think. Lo yavo Ammoni. No Ammonite or Moabite may enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, let none of them may enter into the assembly of the Lord forever. Why is that? Verse 4. Because they did not meet you with bread and with water on the way when you came out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam, the son of Beor, from Petor of Mesopotamia, in Hebrew it's Aram Naharaim, the land between 2 rivers, to curse you. But Jehovah your God would not listen to Balaam. Instead, Jehovah your God turned the curse into a blessing for you, because the Lord your God loved you. You shall not seek their peace or their prosperity all your days forever. You shall not abhor an Edomite, etc. Okay, so that's the first time. You have nothing to do with them because they were bad and they hired Balaam against you. Balaam, in this text, is from the land between 2 rivers, right? Very clear. Okay, now go to Joshua. These are the references to Balaam outside the book of Numbers. Go to Joshua chapter 13, and I think it's verse 21. That is all the cities of the tableland and all the kingdoms of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, whom Moses defeated with the leaders of Midian, Avi, Rechem, and Zur, and Hur, and Reba, the princes of Sihon who lived in the land. Balaam also, verse 22, the son of Beor, the one who practiced divination, was killed with the sword by the people of Israel among the rest of their slain. Balaam is killed. Interesting. We're going to talk maybe later about why was Balaam killed. And there's a lot of speculation in commentaries, and they have to rely on the fact, at least mostly, that there must be something we don't see in the story, like he had ulterior motives. But if you read the story, all along you get Balaam saying, well, I can only say good things about Israel, On the surface, he appears to be right. By the way, think about this, because it hit me last night. What language is Balaam speaking? And what about Balak? We read it in the Hebrew Bible. It's all Hebrew by now. But you have to wonder, is that the language they were speaking? And how do we have it in Hebrew? Just a thought. Okay, look now at Joshua 24. Joshua chapter 24 and verse 9. Then Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, arose and fought against Israel, and he sent and invited Balaam, the son of Beor, to curse you. But I would not listen to Balaam. Indeed, he blessed you, so I delivered you out of his hand. And then it says, and then you went over the Jordan and came to Jericho, etc. All right, look at Micah. Now we're in the prophets. Joshua, Micah are both considered the prophets. So go to Micah chapter 6, one of my favorite chapters. I just want to read to you verse 5. O my people, remember what Balak, king of Moab, devised, and what Balaam, the son of Beor, answered him, and what happened from Shittim to Gilgal, that you may know the righteousnesses of the Lord. Now look at your map, your Bible map. If you find Shittim and Gilgal, you're going to be just a little north of the Sea of Salt, the Arava Sea. Shittim is on the east side. Shittim is in the Jordan side on a modern map, and Gilgal is on across the Jordan. So what I want you to understand, what Micah is saying, it's this place from Shittim to Gilgal that God demonstrates his righteousnesses towards Israel. The last stop of the wilderness, the first stop in the land. That's an interesting thing to think about. We'll talk more about that in another class. But what I want you to see is that this prophecy mentions Balaam. All right? Now, one more, look at the book of Nehemiah, chapter 13. And it says in verse 1, on that day they read from the book of Moses in the hearing of the people, and in it was found written that no Ammonite or Moabite should ever enter the assembly of God. What were they reading? They're reading the book of Moses. And what passage are they reading? They're reading Deuteronomy. In fact, every time it says they're reading from the book of Moses, it points us to Deuteronomy. For they did not meet, verse 2, the people of Israel with bread and water, but hired Balaam against them to curse them. Yet our God turned the curse into a blessing. So, the words of a pagan prophet, a seer by the name of Balaam, finds himself in every division of the Hebrew Bible, the Torah, the prophets, and the writings. And you know, one of the prophecies of Balaam is chanted or sang in synagogue services every Sabbath. Ma tovu ohaleka Yaakov, ohaleka Yaakov mishkanoteka Yisrael. How goodly are your tents. You remember this? When Balaam looks out over the children of Israel, he sings Matovu. I don't think he sang it in Hebrew, but his words find their way into Jewish synagogues around the world. Speaking of Judaism, the Talmudic tractate Baba Batra, designated in this place 14b, Baba Batra 14b, it says that one of the things that Moses wrote was his book. And you say, well, yeah, and most people think his book is Genesis through Deuteronomy. Then it says, and he also wrote the book of Balaam. Well, I thought the book of Balaam was in the book that he wrote. Why is it called out? I believe it's because the book that he wrote, the book of Moses, is the little book that's described in Deuteronomy chapter 31 and elsewhere, that he finishes writing to the very end and gives it to the Levites who carry the ark. We still have 3 chapters left, and it's already talking about Moses finishing his little book. We've talked about all that. But according to the Talmud, Baba Batra 14b, Moses also writes the book of Balaam. What is the book of Balaam? Well, interestingly enough, my archaeological Balaam, that inscription is called in its opening the book of Balaam. The question that I have for you today is the Deir Allah, the place, this archaeological site, I'm now getting to the name, is called Deir Allah. Deir Allah. On the wall at Deir Allah, this inscription, is this inscription of a Balaam son of Beor, is it celebrating the same guy? Archaeology, I believe, meets face to face with the biblical account east of the Jordan in this instance. And it's not the only instance. When they found the Moabite stela, August 19th, 1868, when it's shown by the Arabs to Reverend Klein, and that whole story begins to open up, it's soon realized that the Mesha stone, the Moabite stela, tells a story about Mesha, who is a king whose god is Chemosh. Remember that ancient bard that the boys were sitting around singing from Numbers that I read earlier? The singers at the tent with the wind blowing in the breeze, and it's talking about the god Chemosh. The Moabite stela tells about a battle. It's dated to the 9th century BCE. It tells of a battle between King Mesha and the Israelites and Judah fighting together. Believe it or not, Israel and Judah go and they team up with the Edomites and they come against Mesha. And the story is told in 2 Kings of that battle. The Mesha stone tells it a little bit differently. But again, the Bible meets archaeology. Now, we are foolish not to consider all of these ancient sources. And that's why I want to talk about this inscription. I want to ask the question, no one in their right mind said of the well, I can't say that. There were people who probably did. But most people, reputable scholars, when you look at the Mesha stela and you read about King Mesha of Moab and the god Chemosh, you don't say that's not the same as the biblical King Mesha from Moab, whose god is Chemosh. You say, oh my goodness, we have a biblical story which archaeology is attesting to. And it dates to this ancient battle. So my question is, if the details don't exactly line up, do we dismiss or do we take it as an interesting observation? Our name, the biblical Balaam, is named the same as the archaeological Balaam at Deir Allah. They have the same dad's name. They refer to the deity by some of the same terms and approximately in others. They both have visions from God, which come to them at night. But in the book of Numbers, the king of Moab sends men to get Balaam from where? From whence? Look one more time with me. Let's go through this. Numbers chapter 22. Let's see if they're from the same place. 22:5. Sent messengers to Balaam the son of Beor at Petor. At Petor. Actually, in the Hebrew, it doesn't say at Petor. It says Petorah, which means towards Petor, wherever Petor is. I don't know where Petor is. Some scholars speculate, but I don't know. But here's what we know. He says, Vayishlach Malakim el Balaam bin Beor Petorah. And the messengers sent to Balaam, son of Beor, towards Petor. Now, where is Petor? The next phrase says, al ha'ar, upon the river. So we know that wherever Petor is, towards Petor, they send the messengers, look, go towards Petor. Where is it? It's on the river. Okay, it's on the river. I'm headed that way. That's all we get. Now, the next phrase says, in the land of the sons of his people. The Hebrew is Eretz B'nai Amo, which is translated a land of the sons of his people, Amo. So you say, well, wherever his people are from, which could still give you different interpretations. Now, this is generally believed because of other passages to be somewhere in Mesopotamia. Remember, Aram Naharaim. Deuteronomy says it clearly, Aram Naharaim, the land between two rivers. So you go, oh, the land between two rivers is Mesopotamia. It's Aram Naharaim. Some associate that that's the case, and they put it at the river Sajur. In fact, the scholar Milgram. Now, Milgram says, if this is right, it's a 400-mile journey. So the Moabites are like, man, Israel's coming. They're coming. I tell you what, go send, get that guy Balaam. You mean the one in Petor? Like, yeah, it's only 400 miles. That's a 3-month journey, all right? This is what Milgram says, a 3-month journey. So, about 400 miles. So you think, man, by the time he gets there and get back, if you're worried about Israel coming in, can you hold them off for a fourth of a year? Maybe it's not that far. But again, Deuteronomy 23:5 says, Aram Naharaim, Tigris and Euphrates is what's assumed. Now here's an interesting thing. The Samaritan Pentateuch here in this verse, you know, I just read you, it says, this is where, according to the Masoretic text, Balaam is from Eretz B'nai Amo, the land of the sons of his people. In the Samaritan Pentateuch in Numbers 22:5, it says, Eretz B'nai Ammon, from the land of the sons of Ammon. It's one letter difference. If it had a noon on Amo, it would say Ammon. The Samaritan Pentateuch says that they sent messengers to the land of the Ammonites. That's right there. Which, in fact, it's very close to the place in Deir Allah where an inscription was found on the wall describing the celebrity of a seer named Balaam. So there's still a debate about what, if any, connection exists between Balaam bin Beor and Balaam bar Beor. Notice I just switched the Hebrew and the Aramaic there. And if they're different, what does that mean? But even more importantly, if they're describing the same character, what does that mean? The inscription discovered at Deir Allah is the earliest mention of a biblical name attested in archaeology. Balaam is the earliest biblical name that's attested by archaeology. The stories bear a striking resemblance. They both tell the story, the same name prophet, the same name of the father of the prophet, referring to God by the same terms, the manner in which they receive the message from God is the same. I propose that the Balaams, sons of Beors, mentioned in the Bible and at De'er Allah, are the same. I believe that they describe the same person. The archaeological Balaam is describing the biblical Balaam, and the biblical Balaam is talking about the guy they found at De'er Allah. Now, the archaeological inscription about Balaam at De'er Allah is not totally complete. And there are portions of this inscription which are still debated. And I haven't studied it like I've studied these others. I didn't have time when I really got into this yesterday, actually, to go in and look at all the words. I mean, anybody who can read and has good tools like I have can work through this. You don't have to have a PhD from a university to do this. You just need good tools and a desire to get to an outcome. So I do want to look at the language of this and take a crack at what does it say. I want to read Balaam's name in this ancient script. I want to read Beor. I want to see what they say looks like Shaddai, because I want to know. But nonetheless, it's incredibly important, because on the eastern side of the Jordan, the Israelite people faced a famous seer, famous to the region, and so famous that even apart from the biblical text, his name is written on the walls. His name is Balaam. His words are found in all three sections of the Hebrew Bible. His blessings over Israel have stood the test of time and are repeated in synagogue services on Shabbat around the world. A lot of people have a negative view of Balaam, but I'm going to tell you one thing. God certainly spoke through him. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Have a beautiful week. I'll see you here, same time, same channel, next week. Have a beautiful week.